Before we get underway, I have a few matters I need to cover with you. First off, the fire exit is located to your left. In the event of a fire, you will be notified by an announcement. If so notified, please move in a calm and orderly fashion to the exit. Do not use the elevators. Use either the north or the south stairs to leave the building. Meetings are being recorded by our Secretary, Michelle, for the purpose of a record and minutes, not a verbatim transcript, to help her identify in the minutes who says what. When you come to the podium each time, please speak clearly into the microphone, state your name, so that she can get that correct in the minutes. We follow the items in the order that they appear on the agenda, and extra copies of the agenda are available at the table next to the door. The way we work it is that once the case is called, the applicant or their representative should come to the podium, identify themselves, state their address, pause a moment to raise their right hand and be sworn, and then present their case to the board. During the presentation of the case, the members of the board have an opportunity to raise questions or clarifications with the applicant. When that process is completed, the case is open to public input. Anyone wishing to speak to the board regarding the application should come to the podium, identify themselves along with their address, direct their questions and comments to the board, not to the applicant. Once all public input has been we have three categories of public input that have been identified. We'll call first those who wish to speak in favor of the application. Then we call those who wish to speak in opposition to the application. And the third category are those who have some interest in some aspect of the application, but don't have a position either in favor or opposed to the application. Once all the public input has been completed, the applicant or their representative are given an opportunity to respond to anything that came up during the public input portion, and then the hearing is closed and we'll continue on to the next case. Once all of the cases have been heard, the board will take a short recess and then return to deliberate the cases in the order that they appear on the agenda and for which the applicant is still present. So if the applicant for the first case has left, we would do the second case and then come back to the first case after we finish with the second case. During the deliberative portion of the meeting, there is no opportunity for any further public input unless it's specifically requested by a member of the board. If you want to know what was decided, you're free to catch us on TV, I think up in the 1300s on cable, or you can call the zoning and planning office tomorrow morning after 9 o'clock, and they would be glad to tell you what the decision was. So we will call the first case on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First item on the agenda is case number ZB 2023-12-01. Request by Hannah Wall for area variances to maintain existing front yard fencing, exceeding maximum permitted height and linear footage, and non-conforming fence type on premises 4004 St. Paul Boulevard in an R1 residential district.
Good evening. I'm Brian McCormick, and I'm here on Hannah Wall's behalf. I'm her husband.
And your address, sir?
4004 St. Paul.
If you'd raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So today, we're asking for this variance, of course. We have our front yard, which is, my wife intends to open a daycare, and as a consequence, we need play space outside. We have both the front and the backyard, of course, and the backyard is shaded. It's kind of buggy and hilly, and the front yard is open and bright, and unfortunately, also next to St. Paul, which is very busy. So not only do we have so we would like to have a fence to keep children playing in that yard safe, not only for a daycare, but we have a 9-month-old who we're hoping grows up and has a lot of fun in that front yard. We're asking for, of course, those 3 variances. It is quite a bit longer than the normal permitted amount. It's close enough to the road that we're asking for that additional foot. And while the front of the fence is wood stockade, the sides of the fence, which will be hidden by the different hedgerows, will be chain link fence for primarily because that's safer for children who are playing in that yard. We hope that the hedges hide that almost completely, so that it doesn't affect anyone looking at our yard and seeing a chain link fence. We also our driveway is going to be fenced in as well, so that's what follows right up that property line, which we've spoken to both neighbors on both sides, and they're amenable to it.
How is the driveway going to be fenced?
So the fence will run up the one side of the driveway, and there'll just be a gate across the driveway in the front and the back of the driveway. And that will allow us to have kids playing on tricycles, and to make sure that we can move it, have people drive into our driveway and close it behind them, keep kids safe.
Is this daycare licensed yet?
It is not yet licensed, but the 12 number requires a license, but the 6 does not. We're able to, with a review, do that. So we'd have the space reviewed, but the license, I believe, is required for 12.
Well, I don't see how the wooden fence that you've got there now is going to keep kids safe from getting it out into St. Paul. There's large gaps, and it seems to me it wouldn't take much for a young child to go under or through the middle gap.
Absolutely.
In looking around the neighborhood, there are other fences. There's a fence right at the corner of Thomas Avenue and St. Paul, and the other street that goes off.
Yes, sir.
Sagamore, thank you. And we approved that fence for, among other reasons, to keep kids safe, and that seems to have done a good job. And there's other examples of that kind of fencing that are, next to Genrick's on Cooper Road. There's a gentleman further down Thomas Avenue that we approved fencing like that for, because that serves the purpose of protecting, kids in the yard and that kind of thing, but also is aesthetically pleasing. The fence that you have there now fails on all those counts, in my opinion.
The reason why is we were asked to stop. So it's a stockade fence. The intention is that it will be, there's those rails, of course, but then there would be wooden panels on the front and the back of that.
So it would be like a wall.
It would be a stockade fence.
A wall. 4 feet high?
4 feet high.
Right. And the problem with a wall on the front that close to the sidewalk is exactly what, in my view, the zoning ordinance is designed for, and that is to allow for the appearance still of openness, open views, that the kind of fences that I've referenced afford that and also serve that kind of purpose. So I guess my question to you is, are you willing to take down that wooden thing, not put up a wall fence, and put in more decorative fencing, picket fencing, the black fencing that's in the neighborhood already?
We're absolutely happy to work with you guys to figure out whatever suggestions you have.
I also have a problem with a gate at the driveway. I know we approved one gate, I think it was about 10 years ago, for someone who had an autistic child, and they were very concerned that they would get out. And every time I've driven by that place in the years since, the gate's been open. So I question whether or not it really served the purpose that we were told it was for. Isn't there some other way of, without a gate going across the driveway, of like adult supervision to make sure the kids are safe in the driveway when they're riding on their tricycles?
I mean, two things. One, kids get away, you know.
How about stretching a net of some kind across? My concern is that what you have there now and what you were telling me is reminiscent of a wall, and then we're going to have a gate. So it's going to make it look like this is some kind of restricted access, which I know is what you want, but it doesn't have to look that way.
Sure.
Isn't there some other thing that you can do other than a gate going across the driveway?
I would have to confer with my wife about that, but I think what part of the issue is we wanted to minimize the visibility of the fence, and so there's an existing hedgerow that chain link is running up along, and then we would have running alongside our driveway, and it'd be essentially another exposed fence that wouldn't have any bushes or anything up against it. We were hoping to hide it essentially that way as well. But if that's going to be something that you require, I mean, we'll look into that.
Well, I only speak for myself, but
Sir.
The chain link fence to me does not look very attractive at all. And in the front yard, I mean, in the side yard, in the backyard, it's great. It really doesn't pose a problem. But the whole, the black fencing that I've referenced in those locations, you hardly notice it as you're going by. And I think that more enhances visibility and the openness than what you've got there now. So you're willing to adapt that?
We're willing to adapt it. From my understanding, current child care guidelines recommend a 4-foot fence. So if we can find a 4-foot fence that is of that character, is that amenable?
Well, I believe those fences that I'm referencing are 4-foot fences. I think there are more 4-foot fences than there are 3.5, which is why we have had so many variance applications for the extra 6 inches.
Sure.
Over the years. So the 4-foot fence isn't a problem, particularly if the daycare regulations, and it makes sense that they would want a 4-foot fence. But I think it can be done in some kind of a more decorative and aesthetically pleasing fashion than what you've got there now, and chain link. Okay?
Do you mean that only for the front, or would you request that was also on the sides as well?
Personally, I'd prefer that it be on the sides, but the rest of the board, is there a reason why on the sides needs to be chain link as opposed to what would be in the front?
It's those. There's a couple of things. It's going to be quite expensive to put in that decorative fence all the way around or all the way around the yard. Second, it's just about as safe as you can get. I mean, with those decorative fences, you can still, get their head through. They might be able to. They're harder to, chain link is harder to climb. Just for a little kid.
When I was growing up, chain link fence weren't a problem at all for us.
Well, I'm hoping.
We played outside in those days in the street too, so I don't know.
I have to give myself at least the illusion of security for my baby.
Do you know how many kids your wife might be bringing?
So, without a license, I believe it's personally up to 3. We intend to start off with 6, and then if she has an assistant, that could go up to 12.
My question, again, with the gate and stuff, it didn't look like you had much space to where the gate's going for people to pull in to drop people off if the gate's going to be closed. So if you start backing people up on St. Paul, it's going to be a little difficult.
No, I understood.
Right where you are, unfortunately, it goes in all different directions.
Yeah, understood.
So, I don't know what times you're planning for the kids to be outside and the gate to be open. You know what I mean? They're closed. But those are things to look at. And as long as the stockade fence, I would be worried about people coming out of your driveway and having a wall there where they couldn't see if somebody was walking in that particular part. So I believe in the open style as well. But I would think about, I don't know if you want to think about putting it back further or whatever, because if somebody comes in to get their kid for some reason, you're going to have a lot of shuffling around to get a car in there.
Understood. We do have in the back
A turnaround.
A turnaround.
Yeah.
It is our intention to, have essentially everyone waiting. Hannah to let them in the morning and then waiting for them in the evening. But we are, it definitely, the backing up into St. Paul, we, understand that would be a really big concern, and we definitely don't want to inconvenience the neighborhood that way. Because that would inconvenience our neighbors, and that's just not what we're
Well,
after.
when you start talking, is a vehicle going to be there during the day, and you got the turnaround, and maybe an assistant, and those two spaces are taken? So you get, all that's got to be looked at, and for us to understand what's going to happen.
Understood.
Because we don't really want a car to stop on St. Paul to turn in. It's gonna be tough, unless you're going to have all kinds of scheduled times. That's, I don't know what you're planning that way, but those are things to think about.
Thank you very much.
So I just want to be clear, the whole reason for this fencing is because of the number of kids you're going to have in the daycare, right?
Well, it's the character of the front yard is just better as a play space.
But
And
what's prompting this is that your wife's going to open a daycare,
correct.
and you're going to start off with 6,
And we're going to start off with 3 until she's licensed, and then 6, and then
because my question is, I would prefer to, as a condition of any variance that we might grant, to say that it's conditioned on actually getting the license for the daycare. Because I don't want to be led into a situation where we're agreeing to put up a fence to protect a larger number of children than are actually present, and then find out that we approved something that it didn't work out with the daycare for whatever reason. It's not licensed, but we still have the fencing there.
yeah, I understood. It's going to be a requirement, if I'm not mistaken, and my wife is the expert on this, and I'm sorry that she's not here. But my understanding is there has to be an outside play space. So to be able to get that in the first place.
If we grant you a variance that's conditioned upon her having a license to run the daycare, then you've already got our approval
Sure.
for the fence.
Yes.
So that allows you to represent to them that you do have an outside play space because we've approved it already. But
Understood.
we don't want it there if you're not doing that.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay.
Is it possible for us to... Never mind. I'm just thinking about the, obviously, like, I also want that space for my child, right? I want her to be able to grow up and play in that space, and be safe. So, we certainly, that makes sense what you're saying. So we can take that back and I'll talk to my wife about it.
All right. So do you want, when you say you're going to talk to your wife more about it, does that mean you want to come back in January with more finalized plans, or what?
I think that it would be for the best if we did that.
Come back in January?
So that we could, I think it would be best if we did that, so that we can come back and say, we've looked at the fencing, we're sure that we feel that it's child safe, because I want to just make sure that we're all on the same page.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Also, take some time and drive around the neighborhood and look at the fences that are already in front yards and what they have. There's, as I mentioned, the one down on Thomas Avenue. There's one next to Genrick's. There's a couple more that are further north on St. Paul. And I know that there's a couple of fences that are further south on St. Paul. One is between Cooper and Titus, and the other is further south between Titus and Longacre. The two that I'm thinking of are both on the west side of St. Paul.
We'll make sure.
And there's several others, but I can't pinpoint them. But I think that'll help you get an idea of the kinds of things that we're okay with, because most of those have been approved by us in the past.
Okay.
Okay?
I really appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Did anyone else on the board have any questions or anything? Was there anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this application? Step right up, everybody, one at a time, please, though.
Hello, my name is Michael Governale. I'm at 4164 St. Paul Boulevard, which is about 2 blocks north of 404. I'll make this really quick. I cannot support a variance to put a fence in the front yard at all, as the reasons that the board has already stated. Everything about the fence that's there now goes against the town code. I've owned 2 homes in Arundecoid. I've built 2 fences. All have conformed to town code with no problem. I live on St. Paul. Again, I have 2 children. They've played in the front yard under our supervision, no problem. They're grown, kids are smart. They know not to run into the street. I am sensitive to the fact that if this is a daycare, that would be a different situation. My recommendation would be to put the play area in the back. They have plenty of land in the back. They have more land than I do. But the fence that's there now, I think, has to come down. There's no place for chain link or stockade fencing in the front of any house on St. Paul Boulevard. And also considering that it was put there without consulting the town.
Well, actually, that's not correct.
Okay,
My understanding is that there was consultation with the town, and there was an error that was made in allowing it to start because of a misinterpretation of the code. And that once it was realized that the code had been misinterpreted and the permission shouldn't have been granted, that everything stopped, and that's why we're here tonight and coming back in January.
okay. So everything else about the fence does not conform to town code. I think the fence that's there now should come down. The wooden structure and the chain link, it's inappropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know. We'll find out in a minute. We're wondering if that microphone is on. It is.
Yes, my name is John Hetzel. I live at 4036 St. Paul Boulevard. It's 3 doors from the house in question.
North, towards the lake.
I've lived there for over 40 years, and I have a couple of questions. I guess, was there ever a permit taken out in the first place? I guess you said that there was
There was.
a mistake made.
Yeah.
Is there a certain setback from the sidewalk that a fence is supposed to be?
The setback is measured from the right-of-way, not from the sidewalk.
And the right-of-way being the curb of the street?
Not somewhere between the curb and a point inland from the street.
Okay, one of my questions is then, if the fence is right up close to the sidewalk, you've got people walking back and forth there. It's a very heavily trafficked area where people walk to exercise, walk their dogs, the kids go back and forth to school. Is a fence going to hinder somebody from seeing the sidewalk and the people going up and down? They ride their bicycles on the sidewalk, which move quite fast along there. That's a concern I got.
Okay.
Also, I know the property fairly well, and I've been back there where their turnaround is. You put 1 or 2 cars back in there, there's no place to turn any cars around. All the houses between Cooper Road and Thomas Avenue have turnarounds in their driveways. Nobody backs into St. Paul. It's suicide to try, especially there because it funnels, when you're going north and south, that particular spot of St. Paul funnels because of the contour of the land and the way the streets are divided and stuff like that. And it's very busy. When people are heading north from Thomas at the signal light, it funnels from 2 lanes down into 1 lane with a turning lane in the middle. Well, when they leave that signal light, they drag race each other to see who's going to get to that single lane first. So nobody's going 35
You're
miles
talking
an
about
hour.
going south from Thomas.
Going
Towards
south.
Cooper.
Yes, I'm sorry, going south. And right where their driveway is where it turns in to two, one lane. So people turning in and out of that driveway, I mean, that's going to be a nightmare. It looks like the gate is going to be back 20 to 30 feet from the street or from the sidewalk. Does that mean the cars will come in, stop, pick up kids before they go through the gate and then try to back into St. Paul? I don't know. Okay, what the paperwork said is to maintain existing fence, okay. Exceeding maximum height was in the wording. Exceeding maximum height of 3.5 or 4 foot? What are we talking about?
The ordinance, as I believe it's presently written, provides for a 3.5 foot height limit. What they're looking for would be 4 feet. So that would be, it wouldn't be 6. It would be a 4 foot as opposed to a 3 foot. And my understanding is most of the fencing comes in 4 foot height, not 3.5.
Okay. And another terminology in there was a non-conforming fence type. What is that? What's meant by that?
It means that it doesn't conform with what the ordinance requires, which is a open style picket kind of fence like the fencing that I've referenced earlier.
Okay. Okay. Oh yeah, and I just found out that I guess it is going to be a daycare, but that also has to get zoning too. I mean, that's an R1 area, right?
I believe a daycare falls under the home occupation law, and they, in addition to the permit they would need from the state, they would fill out an application for a home occupation. Lawyers, dentists, doctors, architects, upholsterers. I'm trying to think of some of the occupations that I know in town have home occupation permits, and there's separate requirements for that in terms of number of people that are coming to the house and that kind of thing.
Okay. Well, I'm against it because it was set a precedent in the R1 neighborhood that I live in.
Yes, I got that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition, step right up, sir.
Good evening. I'm Steve Mondi. I live across the street at 3991 St. Paul Boulevard. I would join the last two speakers as well as the chair in the comments that were raised before. I often joke with my wife, I know how I'm going to die. I'm going to be turning left into my driveway and get T-boned by somebody drag racing down St. Paul. I would note that in the morning that St. Paul is very, very busy about the time when people would be dropping off. And anyone who's been there knows that even the school bus stopping there for 45 seconds backs up traffic all the way down to to Cooper. So I would be against any variance for the fence. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else that wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Is there anyone who'd like to discuss some aspect of the application with us, like the height of the fence, the kind of the fence, but you're not in favor or opposed to it? And just the other day, I did see somebody in a Jeep who accelerated past 6 cars from the school going through that intersection so they could be first at the when it narrowed. And lo and behold, they ended up at the same red light as everybody they went by. Somehow that always seems to happen. All right, does the applicant wish to respond at all to any of the comments that were made during the public input portion?
I think that their comments reflected other comments that were made today, and I think that what we talked about before covers my responses to that.
Then, with your permission, we will ultimately, I suspect, table your application to January.
Yes, sir.
And we'll look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I have a motion?
Oh, you want to do that now?
Oh, sure.
Sure. All right. I'll make a motion that we table the application pertaining to 4004 St. Paul Boulevard with the consent of the applicant. I would note, for the purposes of our discussion, that this is a type 2 action for seeker purposes.
I'll second.
Is that Cecil?
Yeah.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 6 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. No board members are absent, but the board remains constituted as 1 member less than our full capacity.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit there.
Well, you're welcome. So everything I said before about applicants still being present and everything, now that we're down to 1 case, none of that applies. Because it'll be the only case we'll be deliberating on.
And you can blame me.
No, that's fine. We don't have to do everything the way we always do. All right.
So the next case on the agenda is a tabled item from, I believe, the October meeting, if somebody would like to.
I'll move that we remove this case, what is it, ZB 2023-0801, pertaining to 41 Colebrook Drive. That we move it off the table and onto the agenda for this evening.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 6 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. No members of the board are absent. The board remains constituted at 1 less member than authorized. So now we can call it.
Thank you, sir. Case number ZB 2023-08-01, request by 43 North Real Estate for a use variance to redevelop an existing structure to reuse as multifamily housing and mixed-use commercial on premises 41 Colebrook Drive in an R1 residential district.
Is there an applicant? Oh,
I didn't know if they were going to call my name first. Joel Barrett of Fairhaven Road.
do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
So I'd like to use this time to summarize the documentation that we have provided to the board as evidence and evidencing the inability to have a reasonable rate of return through permitted R1 uses. The cost of renovating the property is just too high in comparison to market rents as a school or other permitted uses within R1. The financial analysis that we submitted to the board contemplates renovating and reusing the property as a school. Using the property in its existing state as a school would provide the best possible chance to generate a reasonable rate of return. Other uses within R1 would require conversion, costly demolition, or converting the building to something it's not. So we chose the most simple path to go forward to try to attempt to evidence our rate of return. So the financial analysis used for a school was prepared with market and broker rents, third-party construction estimates for renovating and environmental abatement, Americans with Disability Act and Board of Education code requirements, architecture engineering costs, and operating and debt service costs. These costs combined represent the total costs necessary to be able to determine the reasonable rate of return. Debt service being interest costs, operating costs being taxes, insurance, repairs, maintenance, capital, etc. The analysis that was provided with this expert third-party data clearly evidences the inability to make a reasonable rate of return when all the costs are included. The rent for a school is just too low, and the costs of construction in today's environment are just too high. We have presented the financial information for the most efficient and lowest cost use of the property as a school. Preparing financial analyses for other R1 permitted uses would result in an even greater financial loss. However, we did look at the property to convert it to single family, since that was referenced in one of the broker statements provided. The cost of demolition, environmental abatement, and subdivision of the lots for property as use of the single family would be approximately $1 million, which would render 2 viable lots to build on based on the current lot size. It's just under an acre. The price of lots would be greater than $500,000 each. That's between 5 and 10 times more than comparable lots in the town of Arundequoit. The price to build a single-family home is approximately somewhere between $150 to $250 a square foot. And I can attest to this because I am a general contractor and own a construction company that builds these type of homes. It's very costly these days, which is why you're seeing the price of existing real estate go up so much, because there is no way to build less expensive. So therefore, the cost of a 2,000 square foot house after the school is demolished would be somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million without the consideration of a reasonable profit, far exceeding the cost of similarly sized homes in the town of Arundequoit. It's clear that the property would be more expensive and not generate a reasonable rate of return. We've also provided the board with nearly a decade of publicly available third-party broker data evidencing the parish's efforts to sell or rent the building without a viable buyer or tenant. That was included in our package. The current state of the property was created by market conditions present nationally for Catholic churches and schools. And schools across the country are experiencing similar fates and similar repurposing efforts.
Can you help me understand that, how the national conditions affected the physical condition of this property?
Yeah, so just being involved in real estate pretty much my entire life, picture if you put a car in a garage, you don't start that car for a period of time, you're not driving it, what happens to that vehicle? Are you able to just open the door, even with your best efforts of saying, hey, I took care of that car, I locked it up, I had the roof, I had it in a dry place? It just is not as easy to restart that without somebody occupying the property. It happens the same way.
Isn't using your analogy, isn't it because you didn't go into the garage every day to start the car for 5 minutes to
Yeah.
run, so it would be okay later on when you wanted to pull it out?
I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay.
However,
Well, that's my concern is the extent to which you rely upon the deteriorated condition of the property and the fact that the deteriorated condition of the property was caused by the failure of the owner to do any routine maintenance to maintain the condition as it was. That's my concern.
Yeah.
Because that would allow anyone pretty much to let their property go to seed. I'm not going to take care of it, let it fall apart, let whatever happens to it, and then I can go in and say, well, the condition of my property is such now that this is I can't realize a reasonable rate of return, so I should be able to do something else. I have a real concern about that.
I can understand and respect that. However, I would say that for that 10-year period of time, they were maintaining the property. They had roofing repairs that were evident. There was doors boarded up. There was windows boarded up to avoid, and the fact that they were unable to obtain a tenant is the reason that the property remained vacant. Could they have spent extraneous sums of money and created a greater loss during that period of time to a parish that was experiencing financial hardship during that period of time? Yes, that's a possibility that they could have spent an exorbitant sum of money to keep heat on, to keep utilities going, to properly heat an empty building without rental revenue, but that would have been at a very extreme loss to the parish. So I can understand someone that's in financial hardship to do the best that they possibly can to be able to preserve the structure. But a decade period of time of vacancy, trying to rent the property, trying to sell the property, not being able to attain rent. I'm a landlord. At some point, there's not much more you can do if no one's willing to take the property in its acceptable state. So my theory is that the market conditions created the vacancy, which created, the inability to have the financial resources to maintain the property as it was a home. Regarding the interest expressed by St. John Bosco, we did honor their request to tour the building and discuss terms of a potential lease on the site. The tour included their headmaster and a member of their board. The member of their board had significant experience in real estate and construction, more than 30 years. Their board member with this significant experience stated during the tour, "We cannot afford the construction, we cannot afford to pay a reasonable rate of rent, and the location does not work for the families of our students. St. John Bosco has made no further attempts to reach out or to attempt to lease or express interest in the property." So these are the most salient pieces of information that I feel is why the property cannot maintain a reasonable rate of return. Even if it was in a good condition, a school simply cannot afford the rent to bring the property up to current code requirements and to do basic necessary renovations and pay a market rate of rent. So without immediate action from 43 North, the property will remain vacant and conditions will continue to deteriorate. And then at this time, I'd like to ask the board if there is any information that they have not been presented that, for evidence that a reasonable rate of return can be achieved or cannot. I didn't know if anything has yet to been received by you that you would need to make an informed decision.
We've received hundreds of pages of materials. Literally,
I believe it. I've seen them.
this is all on this application.
Was any of the information provided shown to create a reasonable rate of return with the property?
Well, we're not here to debate that at this point.
Okay,
We'll debate it later on, but not at this point.
fair. All right, and with that, those are kind of my key points on this, and I'm open for any questions you might have on any of the materials that were provided or any thoughts on construction or market or analysis.
I do have one question, and Michelle, I don't know if you can answer it. If the church were to lose these parking spaces, would they have to go for a zoning variance as well? For the number of seats that they have to what they're gonna lose? Does anybody?
We would have to look at the site plan, check the existing and how it would be affected.
Cause we had gotten something that there was gonna be like 167 spaces left when they need 288. So just concerned.
Yeah, and my understanding is from the review of the existing site plan, it is pre-existing non-conforming, so the site was not built with the adequate number of spaces needed to fill the number of seats in the church.
But it was built with the number that are there now, and now this would reduce it, as Mr. Intini
Right,
pointed.
100%.
So it could be possible. I would have to, like I said, we would have to do the calculations.
Thank you.
Brad, you want to ask? Brad? Mr. Upson? Anything? All right. We will open up the hearing to public input at this point. Those who wish to speak in favor of the application, please line up and come up to the podium one at a time.
Mr. Chairman, I did receive 2 phone calls that called ahead of time for public input. The first one is Jacob Zoglin.
Okay.
Mine was for an opposition. Do you still want to go in?
No, we're doing
Sorry.
first those who wish to speak in favor of the application.
Good evening. Richard Barone, 154 Allwood Drive. I've been I'll be okay. I've been a resident of the town for about 55 years. I love this town. I've owned 3 houses that I've lived in. I also owned about 3 houses I rented out. My credentials for speaking tonight, because this is a legal hearing, you have to make a decision, is that I sat on this planning board of the town of Arundequite for 14 years and 10 years as the chairman. I also was a councilman for 8 years. So I was involved in an awful lot of public hearings. I was very versed in the law and the practices of the town. First of all, a correction. It disturbs me that when people are being misled in the town, the signs on residents' lawns stating no R5 is totally incorrect and misleading. This application is not an R5 application. Why? It's not rezoning. R5 is rezoning. Only the town board can rezone. This board cannot rezone. All those signs are misleading to other people who may or may not be involved tonight here at this meeting.
I just want to clarify one thing, Mr. Barone. I hate to interrupt, but those signs are put up by residents and not by the town and not by with anything to do with this board. So it's not the town or this board that's misleading anyone.
I didn't mean to implicate that, but I think for the record, it needs to be stated because people constantly come to
I
these
agree.
public meetings with false information, misleading information, and I wanted to point that out.
I think they were left over from the previous application to rezone.
Save some money. I gotta give them credit for that. This application
Cycling.
is an improvement. Why? In the use. As a school, you got buses, you got cars bringing kids, you got the staff, you got teachers, cleaning people, clerical people. You got a lot of cars coming at particular short periods of time, a lot of traffic at one time. Apartments don't create that. If you look at some of the apartment projects in this residential areas, my mom lived on Brower Road where there's an apartment project right in the midst of a residential area. You hardly ever see any cars there. They're dispersed throughout the day. So to me, it's an improvement. A K-6 or K-8 school would have a lot of cars at those particular times. Also, the building is not being changed. It's not changing the character by changing the building into a commercial-looking building, for example. I believe that this fits the character of the neighborhood, one. Now, you have other conditions you need to look at, and I understand that. The other thing is, I want to speak about the parish. The parish, and I was on the finance council for St. Cecilia's Church for 5 years and the St. Catherine Parish for 5 years. I have an accounting degree with honors, and I was business managers of a public school, a private school, you name it. The parish, in the last 10 years, has decreased in parishioners and people attending church tremendously. We used to have 2,500 people come to masses, for example, about 10, 12 years ago, down to about 500 to 800. You know what that does to collections and contributions? We're looking at least $1 million to $2 million less. So the church has been tight as far as having monies in its operating budget to take care of some of these things. I think it has taken care of things to some extent. I've complained myself about some things they haven't taken care of in other sites where the churches are. So I think, it's unfair to say, well, they should be taking care of everything. Well, when you're tight for money, you don't have it. Sometimes things are not taken care of in the way they should be taken care of. So in my opinion, I think that this is a good project. It's a change. In my experience, in 28 years of being a public official in this town, I also served on the school board for 6 years, is that people fear things. They fear change. We all like things going on and the same as they go. But this town has to change. The people are changing, the economics are changing, the culture's changing, and to some extent the town has to address that change. How you address it in a reasonable way is another issue. We could have honest disagreements as to what extent, for example, you have apartments in any particular place. Also, I don't think this is the start of something. I think the church and the diocese is committed to keeping this church open, especially since it's a Latin Mass. It's a Latin Mass which is unique. It has increased in the membership of the people that come to the Latin Mass from about 50 or 60 when I went to one of the masses a few years ago to like about 200 or 250. So I think there's a commitment on the part of the diocese and the parish. My time up? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next.
pause while I go get the sheet?
Sure.
Make sure that I have. Thank you. So did you, okay. Your name?
My name is Michael DeMott. I live at 189 Seville Drive in Arundequoit. My experience of this particular property in question was as a teacher at St. Thomas the Apostle School several decades ago. Among many positive memories, I recall the beautiful woodwork and the large windows that created bright interior spaces. It would be wonderful to see these and other qualities of this building repurposed for residential purposes. I can also testify, as did the gentleman before me, to the vehicular traffic that was associated with this school when it was in operation. In the morning and in the afternoon, there was a stream of buses and cars ferrying students to and from school. This was in addition to the vehicles used by 20-plus staff members. Other itinerant staff departed at various times during the day, as did delivery vehicles associated with the school. It's very likely the vehicular traffic associated with this building's use as a residential property will be substantially less than that generated in its operation as a school. I believe the same is true for environmental noise. On school days, the far section of the parking lot was used for student recess activities. In addition, that parking lot was used for physical education activities when weather permitted, because the school contains no designated gymnasium. It's very likely that the environmental noise associated with the building's use as a residential property will be substantially less than the amount of environmental noise generated by activities of children during the normal operation of a school. We've seen school buildings of similar vintage repurposed for residential purposes in many communities throughout New York State, including many in Monroe County. The building will be ideal for adaptive reuse as a residential property. I look forward to your approval of the variance required to add residences to this beautiful residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Hi. My name's Jim Brennan. I'm at 4300 St. Paul Boulevard. I'll make this fairly short and sweet. I've got really 3 points to make. One is that I've known Joel for upwards of 20 years at this point, and he's a man of integrity, a man of his word. He actually worked for me for a little while, so I can speak to the kind of work that he's done. And I think there's no better person to be doing a project like this in Arundequoit. The second item is that it's clear that there's not enough housing in Arundequoit today. The price of housing has gone up substantially, pricing out a number of people from the market, and there's really not nearly enough properties that are like this, or what's proposed, I should say. And it's clear based on what Joel's provided is that with 100 people on a waiting list, that there's a high demand for this property. And the third thing is, I live in the neighborhood. We love this neighborhood. I've been in Arundequoit. Well, I grew up in the city. I've lived in Arundequoit now longer than I lived in the city. And it's time for good things to happen in Arundequoit, and this is a good thing to happen. It's good for our residents, and it's good for the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, can everybody hear me? I'll make this hopefully a little more coherent than my earlier comments, but basically, Mike Governale, 4164 St. Paul Boulevard. Me and my wife, we've been watching this building deteriorate for the past 15 years or so that we've lived on St. Paul. Bottom line is, we don't believe that there will be a better opportunity for this project, which has languished for the better part of 2 decades. But we do have a great deal of confidence in Joel Barrett and the folks at 43 North. We do believe that their proposal for the school building would be a good fit for our neighborhood and provide much-needed housing. as previous speakers have mentioned, particularly for Arundecoit seniors and empty nesters as well. 5 basic reasons why I support this proposal is that the building is deteriorating more and more rapidly, which is creating a hazard for nearby residents and children as they walk to and from school. Rehabilitation of this building, whether by a school or by a private development company, is becoming less and less feasible. And it doesn't really matter what caused the situation or who caused it. The bottom line is we're here now, so I think we need to work with what we've got. Either the church or the town of Arundecoit will soon be responsible for the cost of remediation and demolition of this building. And that's likely to be a cost which will be significant based on the age and size of the building, as Joel has mentioned. And I don't want to foot that bill as a taxpayer, honestly. If we have an opportunity to do something with the building that will save us from that cost, we need to take that route and work through whatever parking issues or traffic issues which can be designed and engineered around. Arundecoit has an aging population as well and a shortage of high-quality rental units, and this reuse would be a good solution to that issue. Apartments would generate ongoing tax revenue for the town, much more so than a vacant building. And the use, as previous speakers have said, I believe would be relatively low impact for residential apartments as compared to a retail or commercial use. So I think that's a win-win. In closing, the benefits of this project far outweigh any potential concerns or fears we might have had in the past. So my wife and I urge you to approve the zoning use variance so that this effort can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ann Burns. I live at 199 Bellhurst Drive, which is within 2 blocks of the St. Thomas School. Our family has lived in this beautiful neighborhood for 32 years, and my husband and I have been very impressed by the careful listening and consideration that the 43 North Group has demonstrated over the past year. Thorough doesn't even begin to describe it. We attended one of the community discussion meetings last winter and believe this group is the perfect fit to transform St. Thomas, bring it back to life, and save it from sinking deeper into a state of disrepair, as we've heard this evening. Every week, more boards go up on the window frames, and we just believe that our town is fortunate to have this dedicated group of Arundecoit High School graduates choosing to invest in the repurposing of the school. Their ideas are fresh while keeping the original fabric of the building. The plan is high quality and will pull the tenants we are looking for in our town and attract people back to Arundecoit. As was referenced, there's a waiting list already of 100 people. And there really is a shortage of nice housing. These residential apartments will be a welcome addition to Arundecoit and will fit perfectly with our neighborhood. So I ask the zoning board this evening to approve this use variance. Thank you.
My name is Mary Beth Robinson Bay. I'm at 150 Hillhurst Lane. I've lived in Arundecoit 64 years, all of those within walking distance of this building. I will briefly speak to the emotional attachment that many of us in Arundecoit have to this building. I can summarize that by saying that my father, who's been dead for decades, was in the first class in that school, and our whole family attended that school. It is currently in derelict shape. It is extremely limited in what could appropriately go there. It is unlikely that a school would ever fill that space I am on the board of a charter school, and I can tell you I've been involved in location sites. Charter schools need to be close to the city, and I think it's unlikely that one would have the money or the clientele that could come to that building. So if we can't keep it as a school, we need a fresh, new idea. Vital communities do not let buildings deteriorate, as has happened here. We need to step in and approve this very, very vetted, experienced, local, and well-thought-out group and their plan, because it will bring vitality to all of our neighborhoods. It will raise all of our property values and our pride in our community, and it will house people who want to stay in our community. And so for all those reasons, I strongly support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, Board, thank you for listening to all of our discussions. I'm pastor of St. Cattery Parish, which includes St. Thomas. My name is Father Lance Gagno, 445 Kings Highway South. In terms of involvement since I've become pastor, I've had extensive conversations in trying to resolve. I do take pride as pastor in trying to maintain all of our sites and have done extensive research and dialogue with all participating members, including those that attend St. Thomas. As far as personal efforts go, they extend into concern right now at this point, because of the deterioration of the building, for the general safety of the people who attend church there. There's a large number of children who attend classes in the parish center for faith formation. There are people that are there. What's happening now is, obviously, the building has been vacant so long, and there's so many boards up at the building. Just last Saturday, I drove by and found yet another window smashed. And so the Irondequoit police had to come, and two of them entered the building and came back out and said, we need more people to take a look at this building. There were footprints, evidence of repeated entries, and so I'm very concerned about the safety that it poses not only to our own parish community, but to the town of Irondequoit. And I do take things in a serious fashion and would ask the board to seriously consider and approve this project with a vetted contractor and planner who has fresh ideas to bring a resolution to this ongoing dilemma. I'm fearful for what the future will bring if we continue to go through months of non-occupation. And as far as a lack of attempts, that's false information. There have been many attempts to try to sell the building. I have turned down a number of those offers because I'm interested in preserving the location of the Latin Mass community, and I want them to have a place that they're able to worship, while at the same time accommodating the general needs of all of our parishioners attending our Catholic churches in Irondequoit. Thank you.
Father, can you give us an idea, two questions. You referenced a lot of offers that you've turned down. Can you describe what those offers were? And then can you also address the lack of maintenance and the consequent deterioration of the building? Because that's been raised as an issue that would relate to the issue of whether or not the use variance is the need is self-created.
Right. Well, going back a few years, the building was used essentially as a daycare. And so there was rental income that was being brought in. So the building would have been maintained. As soon as that operation went bankrupt, then they withdrew. There was no other people that were interested in it, and the building started to deteriorate. What then happened was vandalism. We had someone that got into the building and vandalized the boiler, and it's a steam boiler. And if you know anything about steam boilers, you have to maintain them, and at great risk, we had to shut it all down. With that, as soon as you shut down the boiler, then the walls start to go, the ceilings, we have water intrusion, animal intrusion, there are dead possums on the third floor. The whole building it just been a very fast progression of falling apart. Now there's lead paint that is peeled off the walls, asbestos tiles that have come down. It's a wreck. And yes, our congregation has gotten smaller. Our income is limited. I'm already supporting a school, St. Catharines School, right on Christ the King Highway. And so obviously monies need to be allocated to where they're going to be used. The attempt to sell, there was a charter school from New York City. They were interested in the entire campus, including the church, which I turned down. There was another charter school that came. They were willing to say, okay, we could leave the church, but we want the upper and lower parking lot. We also want the parish center. This was of great concern to the people attending St. Thomas, and Andy Flacco in particular, who said, we got to have a place for our children, and I agreed with that. So I went to the diocese and I said, can we modify this plan so that we can sell only the school and a small portion for parking? And they agreed that we could probably go that direction. So then the next was to find someone who was even willing to buy this much. Providence Housing also expressed an interest, but said, we're not interested. We need more land. We want more parking. We want the parish center. And I said, no, that's not going to work. So I've turned down plenty of offers, and I'm interested in preserving our worshiping communities with the least impact. The other is I'm interested in preserving this building. I don't want to see it demolished. It is it's the oldest structure that's on the campus. I think it's 1922 or 23, which is pretty remarkable. I would love to see it repurposed and preserved, and so this, Joel Barrett, his specialty is renovating old buildings. There aren't many developers that are even willing to do that. And to take the building and basically renovate it from the inside and the outside, reflash, re-roof, redo the bricks, do some landscaping. The ultimate package, I think, would be very attractive, not only for us, but for the town.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jim Degnan, 515 Sagamore. Just to kind of bookend the memories comment earlier, I was a member of the last graduating class from that school, 6th grade, 1992. So it hasn't been a Catholic school for 31 years. I have strong affinity memories. I love going to school there, would have loved to send my kids there, but that's, not the case these days. So what I'd rather see is the building preserved. I think the applicant is a great candidate to do that effort, and it's something that really is most viable to enable that building to still be visible in our neighborhood, and something that I think the majority of us want to see happen. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else here who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none, we'll open it up to those who wish to speak in opposition to this application.
Now, do you want to go off my sheet?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. That helps. Jacob Zoglin.
Thank you, Michelle.
I have first.
Good evening, Chairman and board members. My name is Jacob Zoglin. I'm here on behalf of Denise Flanagan in opposition to 43 North Real Estate's use variance application. In August, I appeared before the board as well, and I laid out why each element that needs to be met is not satisfied here. Tonight, I want to bring to the board's attention a further analysis of why the applicant cannot meet their burden of proof, specifically on the unnecessary hardship factor. This is because the applicant cannot show that they would be unable to realize a reasonable rate of return under existing zoning regulations. That fact alone is enough to deny this application. The applicant has failed to provide the dollars and cents proof to establish that it faces an unnecessary hardship. That's the standard that the law imposes. To prove an unnecessary hardship, the applicant must demonstrate that for each and every use that is permitted in this R1 district, that the applicant cannot realize a reasonable rate of return. For tonight, I'll focus on 3 of those permitted uses: churches, schools, and renting single-family dwellings. To meet the applicant's burden, its inability to realize a reasonable rate of return for each of those uses must be both substantial and demonstrated by competent financial evidence, which it has not provided as to each of the uses. Not only did the applicant fail to offer any proof on the reasonable rate of return element for all permitted uses, but the record actually shows the opposite, that the applicant can realize a reasonable rate of return at the property for schools, churches, and single-family rentals. And they even admitted that schools are the best use for this, to realize a reasonable rate of return. Now, let's talk proof. The Crane Realty report was prepared by a licensed real estate professional and proves that the applicant can obtain a reasonable rate of return by using the property as a church, school, or single-family home rental. The report was prepared by an operating principal broker with nearly a decade of experience as a real estate professional, and even more experience as an owner and operator of a construction company, property management company, and multifamily properties. The report relies on exactly the kind of evidence accepted in this profession as reliable in forming a professional opinion, such as real property data for recent and similar nearby sales, comps. The report concludes that the applicant can realize a reasonable rate of return for the property for multiple permitted uses. That's the school use, the church use, and the single-family rental use. Now, let's talk about the church and school uses. The report analyzed recent sale prices of similar parcels around the property that supported church and school uses. The report found 2 nearby properties that can support such uses, both of which were sold for more than $500,000 since 2019, including one that sold for $675,000. From these facts, the report calculates that the applicant can obtain a reasonable return using the property as a church or a school. The report also evaluated the property for use as a single-family rental and analyzed 11 recent sale prices of single-family homes within 1.5 miles of this property. It found sale prices up to $383,000 and an average sale price of over $246,000 for an average sale price per square foot of over $142. The report found that a single-family home within this 1.5 mile stretch recently rented for $1,495 a month, which is up from $1,300 a month in 2021. Using these facts and data, as well as the average cost to build a single-family home in upstate New York, which is calculated at $134 per square foot, the Crane report calculates that the property could realize a reasonable rate of return if used as a single-family home rental, because the average price to rent an 800 square foot single-family home within 1.5 miles of this property is $1,495 per month. The average size of a single-family home in the area, based on the comp sales, is 2,136 square feet. This equals a monthly rent of $3,991.65 for a home that's 2,136 square feet. And from these facts, the Crane report estimates what the applicant's monthly payment for the property would be, based on principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, using 2 different methodologies: an average sale price in the area methodology, as well as an average price per square foot to build methodology. Both methodologies show a reasonable rate of return with rent exceeding costs, resulting in a positive cash flow in each case. The use of the multiple methodologies to reach the same result reinforces each other and shows you validity. For these reasons, dollars and cents proof has not been chosen. They failed to demonstrate their burden, and therefore this application should be denied. I had 1 or 2 points I could make, specifically responding to things raised by the applicant if the board would like. Those relate to the fact that they turned down reasonable offers to use the property for permitted use as a school, and the fact that they're admitted that they would be expanding a non-conforming use by reducing parking spaces. Thank you for your time this evening.
But my question to you is with respect to those comparable sales that you were referencing, and then you went into the average cost of building a single-family home and what the rental rate is and the average square foot and all of that. Does that analysis involve demolishing the building and then constructing new homes on the property?
That involves, correct, the cost to build for that specific area.
What about the cost of demolishing the building?
My understanding from the plain language of the Crane Realty report is that it does include those things, which is why she was able to calculate that the cash flow would be positive, that there would be a reasonable rate of return both for churches, schools, and rentals of single-family homes. It's also worth noting that the applicant stated under oath just now that existing property as a school would be best case, allowing a reasonable rate of return. So it's really not even in dispute. They admitted that earlier on the record.
Can you tell me where, I think that Crane report was in that 100-page submission that you gave us the day of our last scheduled hearing? In October?
The Crane report.
Exhibit what?
Exhibit 3.
3.
That's exactly right. It's attached as Exhibit 3 to my letter to the Zoning Board of Appeals dated September 29th, 2023. Exhibit 3, the Crane report also contains exhibits that are the basis of her analysis, which I would like to clarify the applicant did not provide comparable dollars and cents proof to corroborate its self-serving claims.
All right, I see it now. All right, thank you.
Unless there are any other questions, we'll rest on our submissions. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this application?
Sir, the next person I have signed up is John DiProgetto.
He's not here.
He's not here.
No.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I'm at the end of the list.
Next, I have Joe Palladino.
Joe Palladino, 34 Colebrook Drive. I live directly across the street from this building. First, I want to address the R5 signs. Those signs are there in the people's yards because originally we were up here for a zoning change. Then around the corner, we said, well, we'll do a variance. In my opinion, this building, zoning change and a variance is exactly the same thing. If it gets voted in, there's going to be an apartment and a coffee shop in that building. It's like playing baseball. You get up to bat, hit 4 balls, you go to first base. The next fella comes up, hits a single, goes to first base. They both get to first base, only different ways, okay? We all know Joe's a nice guy. We know he does nice work. We certainly know he's got a lot of cousins, okay? He made a beautiful presentation tonight. It was great if it was for Ridge Road. This is strictly a residential area, single-family homes, okay? And it's just not right, okay? It's a residential area. It's not zoned for that sort of thing. And personally, I don't care if the thing falls down and I got to look at rubble for 20 years. An apartment should not be in that building. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
Next on the sign-up sheet, I have Mark Ramray. And I apologize if I'm messing up the 116 Pinecrest.
Hi, Mark. Thank you. Say the name. I'm Marie D'Amico Ramsey from 116 Pinecrest. This is my husband, Thomas. And we're here again in opposition to the application. A couple quick points. The use variance will change the character of the neighborhood. We absolutely don't know what it could be if the property was repurchased or changed use because it was, application stated it was for a mixed-use commercial. So anything basically commercial could go into that, and that would extremely change the character of the neighborhood. Although we live at 116 Pinecrest, which is at the corner of Pinecrest and Washington, just a block down the street, we did not receive notice of this application directly from the applicant. We heard about it through the news and through the neighborhood. And several things have changed since even we spoke here, but there is a certain amount of lack of forthcoming to the neighborhood and to this board that I think is evidenced by the multiple changes, say in the parking and other things referenced in other presentations here. And as much as we care about the Catholic Church and the Catholic faith, we are not the financial guarantors of the Catholic Church or of that location. And again, I think the chairman was correct in stating that the owners of the property cannot take advantage of their own negligence and the deterioration of the property and then look to benefit from that. I think that there are other uses for this, and you need to be, they need to be looking at that. But we're not here as their consultants or their financial guarantors.
I've lived in Irondequoit my entire life. I've lived in our neighborhood for over 30 years. I've been a parishioner at St. Thomas's for over 40 years. And I'll tell you that since the pandemic, the Latin Mass community at St. Thomas's has just taken off. And it's gone, like Mr. Barone observed, from about 50 or 60 people a week to now we have over 250 people a week. And there's no way that there's enough parking there for an apartment building as well as the church. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Jane DeValder, 743 Oak Ridge Drive, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anybody's name.
No, actually, I must have signed the wrong paper. I was in favor of the project, but I just chose not to speak because other people had made my points quite clear.
Okay,
I apologize for signing the wrong paper.
that's okay. There was only one up there, sorry. Next one, I have Tim Fletch, 64 Bellhurst.
I apologize for the mask, but I've been suffering from a respiratory illness the last
No
couple
need
of
to
weeks.
apologize for a mask at all.
Okay, good. Pull it all the way up. No. So my name is Tim Flesh, 64 Bellhurst Drive. I oppose the repurposing of the building for a number of reasons, most of which have already been discussed. But basically, I object to the fact that the church or the diocese allowed the building to remain open and didn't attempt to maintain it, knowing that if they turned off the boiler, everything was going to fall down, and yet they didn't do anything about it. They're the only, excuse me, the only explanation for how they maintained it was they boarded up windows. Apparently they missed some because there was a recent break-in through a window. But, a number of neighbors have also said and spoken with me about this and said, look, why should we have to put up with what may be a huge change in the neighborhood because the diocese didn't maintain the building or wasn't able to sell it or repurpose it in some way. It seems that I think the priest said 10 years, but I believe it's been more than that, that the building has been vacant. And it seems that the owners of the building should have at least minimally maintained it so that it wouldn't be the disaster that it is now. I've lived in the neighborhood for about 30 years. My 3 sons all went to St. Thomas, and, you know, I feel bad that the school has so deteriorated, but I'm also, as I said, upset that it was allowed to get into that condition, and now it seems like, okay, the church has finally found somebody willing to give them money for it, so they can get it off of their table and let somebody else handle it. To me, that's just wrong. I don't know, I had a few other things to say, but I think most of them have already been said. But thank you for listening. I oppose this proposal. I think that the gentleman here, whom I don't know, is a very slick presenter, but I don't agree with what he said, and I think that he's been able to find, well, never mind, I won't go there. But anyway, thank you for listening, and I look forward to your turning down this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have Peter LaPietra, 94 Harvington Drive. I can. Did I say it right?
You did.
Hey, 1 out of 20 ain't bad.
So like you said, Peter LaPietra, 94 Harvington. I live about 2 blocks from the church. I'm a Maywood resident, and I also I'm part of the Latin Mass, the original Latin Mass community which started at St. Stanislaus in the city in 1993. So I oppose, obviously, this project. The biggest reason I believe is because, and I've made this point a couple times online in the discussions, is that I don't see this project in a vacuum. I see this project as a phase 1 that would, I'm speaking as a neighbor who has a knowledge of the Latin Mass community. Not that there's any, that Joel or 43 North has anything up their sleeve, but when this school becomes apartments, I believe that will set in phase the deterioration, ultimate deterioration, and the closure of the rest of the church. When you hear St. Thomas, you hear Latin Mass community, you hear St. Cattery Latin Mass community. St. Cattery Parish is not the same as St. Cattery Latin Mass community. They're 2 separate financial entities. The Latin Mass community, are basically renters of that space. We have no property rights. We have a CMA obligation. Here's just there's the 2 highlighted. This is the CMA current. You get this online. This is the current status of the CMA responsibilities of all the parishes for the 23-24 year. So here you have St. Cattery, and then you have Latin Mass community. So we basically we actually have that commitment doubled last year, and recently we found out that we got to pay a membership dues of $90,000 to pay for the our share of the abuse fees. So, which is interesting because this community has only existed for 30 years, only been able to collect our own money for 20 years, and we only have 1 mass that we're allowed to have. We're really constricted. So I equate that membership dues to getting a Seabreeze Summer Pass full price Labor Day weekend. That's basically the kind of financial burdens. Everyone has financial burdens, but this is what the Latin Mass community has been dealing with for a long time, even before 1993. So I believe as soon as this goes through, in order for us to stay there, we got to keep paying our bills. We don't own anything, but we got to fix the roof. If we don't fix the roof, if we don't meet the CMA, we're not going to be there. If we're not there, I think the rest of the whole the whole parish goes. When Father Gagno says us, I think he's referring to St. Cattery. They need the money. They are declining in numbers. They have financial obligations. This will benefit them. Nobody has told anybody, at least to me, or I've heard how this project benefits the Latin Mass community. I think it will be a huge gut punch to the community. I've seen collections rise and fall with news that, as you can expect from, that all we have is our pocketbooks as leverage. We don't have any, we don't own anything. So I believe this would ultimately, like I said, result in the rest of the property going up for sale. If you approve this variance, I full-heartedly believe in sometime down the road, you'll have another variance in front of you for the rest of the property. Because unless, like I said, there's some master plan that somebody hasn't told us about or told you about, I don't see how that doesn't come to that. This community is very resilient, but it can only take so much, right? We're gonna lose half our parking. We're gonna have elderly people have to walk twice as far to get into the door. We have to play nice with our new neighbors. I don't know who that's gonna be. I don't know how you grow a parish or grow a community when you're basically bifurcated. You're divided right down the middle. So. I hope you turn this down, because I believe, like I said, if you do not turn this down, it'll open the door for the eventually what I've called Apartment Central on that corner of St. Paul and Colebrook. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Sam and Janice Kriegel, 272 Bellhurst. No? Oh, gotcha. Okay, sorry. Francis Burdick, 4560 St. Paul Boulevard.
Yeah, how you doing? Francis Burdick, 4560 St. Paul Boulevard. Basically, my fiance and I are opposed to this so-called variance, which makes you wonder what they mean when they say mixed commercial use. Does that mean they're going to bring in a quick fill, put it right on the corner there, or something else like that? And it's opening the door, like the other previous person had said, that they're going to get in there and probably try to take over the whole property, put in CVS, quick fill, whatever have you, and change it from R1 to R5. So that's all I can say. I'm backing up what everybody else has said in opposition. Thank you.
Okay, Jack Butler, 7 Morningside Park. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay. How about Don? How about we'll go 4376 St. Paul Boulevard. Sorry.
That's all right. It's Roberts, like the movie.
Roberts. Oh, okay. Now that makes sense.
Yep, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Don Roberts. I live at 4376 St. Paul Boulevard. I've not been to one of these zoning board meetings. This is quite eye-opening, actually. I dread to be in your seats. So clearly, this is a very emotional situation, none of which should impact you at all. I don't think it does. I will say my children went to Stepping Stones daycare there, but this isn't about emotions. It's not about the CVS popping up on the corner. It's not about rumor. It's not about innuendo. It's not about Mr. Barrett and what his intentions may be in the future. It's really about, is there something that's going on here today that is really fits into the 5 tenets of what zoning boards have to do?
you know what they all are. I'm not going to explain them to you. If the folks in the group don't know, then they can look it up. But, you know, from my perspective, you know, what I see is, you know, is there really a change that's happening here that was self-created by these applicants? You know, the building's fallen apart, and am I allowed to ask a question? Who actually owns this property? Does 43 North own it, or does the church still own it?
The parish.
Okay, so, you know, thank you. And I think you have to start with that. Is there some self-created problem here? Because the building's falling apart, you know, according to Mr. Barrett, it can't be a school anymore. What, is that your starting point? You know, and then do you go through all the other ones? You know, with the changes and the impacts it has on the neighborhood and everything else. I mean, there's a room full of people here that love to tell you guys how to do your job, and I'm trying not to do that. So I do oppose this because I think only specifically by the zoning ordinances and the rules that you have to adhere to, this falls outside of that. I'm kind of torn about the idea personally, but I think if you play by the rules, you have to deny this application. And Mr. Chairman, I just on a side note, I don't know if you remember Edwin Newman, the newsman, but I had a very long lecture from him one day about this particular piece of furniture, and it's a lectern, not a podium. So, FYI.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your time.
I think they're both in common usage now, perhaps not properly, but I think most people think of a lectern as being at the front of the church.
Edwin's dead now.
He is, and things have changed. But in any event, he was great. We have somebody else that wishes to speak in opposition to this application.
Yes, sir. Next on the list is Denise Flanagan, 698 List Avenue.
Good evening, Denise Flanagan, 698 List Avenue. I just wanted to clarify a few things, specifically about the signs. Yes, they say no R5. They are some old ones. There's some new ones that actually also say no change of variance. As the applicant stated at his neighborhood meetings a year ago, whether or not there's rezoning, the net result is the same, whether it's a rezone or a change of variance. The church said it's committed to, the parish said it's committed to keeping St. Thomas's open, but St. Salome's was told, sell your rectory, sell your school, you'll have these apartments, people, if they're Catholic, will walk across the parking lot, go to church. St. Salome's, as most of you know, is no more. I suspect that in the not-too-distant future, St. Cecilia's might follow suit, because if anybody's driven down Culver Road, there are apartments looming on the horizon behind St. Cecilia's on the former St. Cecilia's property. When asked if this boded badly for St. Thomas, the pastor said that he can't predict the future. Well, it's not a hard leap to go from what happened to St. Salome's to what could happen to St. Thomas's. I did a simple internet search, didn't take me long at all. I found 3 large Catholic churches in Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Cincinnati. All of those churches have been converted to breweries. So if this variance is granted, the variance is for multi-unit and mixed-use commercial. At some point, if it's granted, how could you not grant somebody else who comes along and says, hey, I want to do this, especially if the church decides it has to close more buildings. In addition, there's a Gothic Catholic church in the city of Buffalo that is slated to have loft apartments, very large structure. Let's see. The people at St. Thomas that worship at the church there would have welcomed the opportunity to have used that school and have kept it going, at least in terms of Sunday school, having the kids walk through the covered thing instead of walking across the parking lot in the inclement weather. Granted, it wouldn't be maybe a big, huge rental situation, but at least it would have kept people in the building and using it. Another point of clarification is that Stepping Stones left the school building in the school year 2013-2014. They did not leave because of bankruptcy. They actually bought a new building. Most of you probably know the former Wegmans, then Chase Pitkin, became Stepping Stones. It was only after they were there for a while that they went bankrupt, or some financial shenanigans were going on, I'm not sure what. If we want to truly save St. Thomas's, as the applicant wants to, it's not just about that school building. It's about the entire campus and the ability to preserve Catholicism and grow the community. And we know that St. John Bosco School is interested. Now, granted, St. Cattery does have a school, but St. John Bosco is an independent Catholic school willing to, come in there. And it wasn't too many decades ago that there were 5 Catholic parishes in Irondequoit, the 5 that now compose St. Cattery, and there were 5 thriving Catholic schools. So I don't think that St. John Bosco would be big competition for St. Cattery. That we should, the sellers should welcome that, because the mission of the church is to grow Catholicism, and it would just be nice to, for the neighbors who aren't necessarily Catholic and just like the character of the neighborhood as it is. I oppose this application, and I hope that you deny the variance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next I have Andy Falaco, 183 Belmead Road.
Good evening, Andy Falaco, 183 Belmead Road. I'm also the headmaster of St. John Bosco Schools. Our board has spent a lot of time since our first letter of interest that was sent to discuss We've spent a lot of time since our first letter of interest was sent to discuss our finances and logistics in regards to this project. As you are aware, Mr. Barrett let us tour the space and offered us rent at $540,000 a year. Considering we pay $30,000 in a mortgage, this model will not prove financially feasible. However, at our November board meeting, our board voted to move forward. On November 27th, our board chairman sent another letter to Father Gagnon, CCing Bishop Matano of the Diocese of Rochester, myself, and Father Bonsignori, the chaplain of the Latin Mass community. I'd like to read it to you now. Dear Father Gagnon, peace be with you. The mission of St. John Bosco Schools is to support parents in their God-given role as the primary educators of their children by cultivating the whole person, mind, body, and soul, uniting spiritual life with work, study, and play. We respectfully recognize that the St. Thomas the Apostle School building is presently under contract, as you previously indicated to us. The developer invited us to tour the building under the auspices of possibly renting space from them. Unfortunately, this scenario would not prove financially feasible. However, we are still interested in this building. In the event that the town of Irondequoit does not grant a variance to the developer who is interested in the property, St. John Bosco Schools would be interested in entering into a discussion with you whereby we would like to purchase the school building from the St. Cattery Tekakwitha Parish. Please let us know if you would be open to a meeting to tour the school and discuss this concept. Sincerely, Robert A. Schick, Board Chairman, St. John Bosco Schools. That's all I have, so if you have questions, all set.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Could we have a copy of that letter for the record, please?
Sure.
Thanks.
Over here.
Since you read it.
Thank you. Sorry. Next is Joan Sullivan, 1109 Marigold Drive. Okay, sorry. Christine Vargas, 824 Houston Road.
Good evening. I'm Christine Vargas, 824 Houston Road. I'm a member of the Latin Mass community. I just wanted to do a follow-up on a couple other conversations. I'm clearly against the variance. I would like to reiterate some previous comments that I made that I believe that an opportunity like St. John Bosco School coming and renovating that school and breathing life back into it is a great opportunity for the town of Arundequoit. And this Latin Mass community, when combined with both masses, there's two masses there, one English, one Latinist, we are averaging 350 people a weekend, okay, on a Sunday Mass. And based on Mr. Barone's numbers, I don't know if they're, I haven't seen those numbers, but based on what he's saying, we're approaching 50% in the parish for attendance, and we've continued to grow. So adding a vibrant school would really help us continue to go in the right direction. And it's not just about being Catholic, it's about creating opportunities to support the community. There's all kinds of things that can be done that were previously done when St. Thomas School was open. Everything from having places to have scouts, having a Lego league, having robotics. I mean, there's all different types of things that can benefit the community. I did want to mention previously at the August 7th meeting and the two community meetings that Joel Barrett had, there was no mention of the 4 garages that were slated and apparently included in the application. And so those garages go beyond just taking the parking that would be going with this building. And so it concerns me greatly that those structures were never discussed. I kind of feel like they were slipped in there. I don't know the specifics, but I do feel that those structures would continue to break up the property right down the middle, which poses all types of other issues for what's left to be used. For the most part, that is all that I really wanted to say, but I would hope that the board looks at that school as a positive thing. Environmental noise I heard brought up earlier of children playing, I think that's a great thing. I think we need more of that. And I think this is a great thing for the town of Arundequoit. Good evening.
Thank you.
Next, I have Kim DiProgetto, 4559 St. Paul Boulevard.
Excuse me. Hi. My name is Kim DiProgetto, and I come to you with concerns. I live right across the street from St. Thomas the Apostle Church. And again, my husband's family, everyone went there. He did Latin Mass. And I can tell you, on a Sunday, any given Sunday, there's cars parked all along the street, Colebrook. In the parking lot's full, but all along the side road there. And another thing, I don't know that anything was done with traffic, and maybe that comes down the road, and I don't know if anybody's seen any of this or there's any complaints, but at night, and if I'm up late, I can see out my window, we seem to be having 18-wheelers coming down that road. If they're coming from 590 or whatnot, but they're coming down Colebrook Road a lot. Maybe just with the flatbed, but it's the long trucks that we're seeing a lot of that traffic come through that area. I don't know, I'm just seeing it. I just feel like that's a very close-knit neighborhood. A lot of the neighbors that live on Thandera and other streets were not notified with the yellow cards. We did go around and talk to people. A lot of people that live in that area don't want it, couldn't be at the meetings. And when we talk about not having apartments in Arundequoit, St. Salome's, St. Cecilia's, the apartments across the street on Titus Avenue, there's 2 off of Hudson, Mike Nolan's apartments, the apartments that are behind Aldi's, up next to Wegmans, along East Ridge Road. I mean, my son lives in, I have family all over, 5 sons that live all over. this just isn't the place that any of them can even see an apartment coming up. And I will tell you, there's a very similar looking apartment on Monroe Avenue that I've seen when I've been over there to visit a friend of mine. And you can't change the outside of the building. The windows are big. It's just, it just doesn't fit the neighborhood as an apartment. And when I saw that, it's just kind of sad. There's like this apartment that they're talking about putting in there. We have to still have church stuff. There's no playgrounds for kids. There's no outdoor space for people. I again agree that a school would be the best fit for that. I just would hate to see us lose the Latin Mass, lose our parking, lose any of it, because again, I do feel my mother did go to the church in Durand, and when that did close up, where were those people to go? A lot of older people went there, and there was nothing after that. And again, we all feel that could happen here too. Thank you.
That's all I have signed up on my list, sir.
I missed the sign up.
Okay.
Is there anyone else that wishes apparently to speak in opposition to this application? If so, come forward. If there's more than this gentleman, if you'd just form a line over there so we know how many we need to accommodate. Thank you.
Eugene Michael, 181 Daly Boulevard, 14617. I have a couple of items I'd like to address here. The first one is building neglect. And this goes to a Facebook posting on 43 North's Facebook page where they responded to an inquiry, and this is a quote, I have a screenshot. 43 North said the building has fallen into disrepair because of the vacancy, not neglect, like most are saying. Well, one of the parties who are claiming neglect is none other than 43 North. On page 8, letter from Joel Barrett to the zoning board of the application states, quote, it should be noted that the interior damage has been caused by vandalism, water penetration, which is a result of long-term vacancy and neglect. So it is or it isn't. As they stated neglect in the application, one can only wonder why they are now apparently trying to walk that back. It is a fact that a use variance is not to be allowed if the situation is self-created. I think many would agree that neglect would constitute a self-created situation. Next item is St. John Bosco School. On the application, page 10, document submitted by 43 North, quote, the applicant cannot realize a reasonable rate of return solely as a single-family residential, school, or religious use. 43 North claims they can't realize a reasonable rate of return if the property is renovated to be used as a school. However, on August 21st, 2023, the applicant met with representatives of St. John Bosco School and stated they would be willing to renovate the building and lease it to them to be used as a school building. It seems rather disingenuous that the applicant has insisted to the zoning board that the building can no longer function as a school, but then went out and solicited a school as a potential tenant. In a document from 43 North dated September 25th that was submitted to the zoning board, they claim that because St. John Bosco has not pursued a lease with them, that this somehow proves the property is no longer feasible for use as a school. However, the proposal that was made to St. John Bosco as described in this document appears to be deeply flawed. In this document, 43 North states that they propose an annual rent of $540,000 based on an annual market rate of $10 a square foot. However, the school building is 36,000 square feet. 36,000 times $10 is $360,000, which is a difference of $180,000. That rate would apply to a building that was 54,000 square feet, not 36,000. So they threw a number at St. John Bosco that appears to be inflated and not connected, at any rate not connected to the $10 a square foot that they state in the letter that they sent to you. So that's a big issue. And then at the end of the letter, the September 25th letter, they say, as such, this is further evidence that the building is no longer economically viable for use as a school, and that St. John Bosco's expression of interest was not sincere. I don't know how you read that into a meeting that you solicited, and then you're claiming that they were misrepresenting the school, that they aren't really interested. Okay. The other issue I want to address is the parking. Right now, I believe there's 277 spaces. The church has an occupancy potential of 900. That's what it's allowed under code. There's supposed to be one space for every 3 occupants, so there should be 300 parking spaces. We're under that now because when the church was built, that was the code requirement. If the building is approved for apartments, they will take 2 parking spaces for every unit. They're proposing 21 to 24 units. That would be 42 to 48 more spaces taken away, which puts us down into the low 200s for a church that has a potential for 900 people. And we've had masses, especially funerals from time to time, with that many people there. So to take that parking away, especially in the center of the parking lot, you're going to push people out to the perimeter. And as our church continues to grow, as we've grown quite a bit since we went there, I think we were under 300, we're up to 350, sometimes 400 on weekends. At changeover between the 2 masses, that's when the church school meets. And there's 80 some odd children in that church school. The people from both masses are parked there at the same time because of the children, some coming from the early mass, some from the late. So it's not just a matter of one mass is only 150, one is 200. The 2 masses combined are both there at the same time because of the church school in between the 2 masses. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Linda Wilson. I live at 98 Harvington Drive. I'm here to oppose the variance change. I'm all for change, and I love that school building, but I do believe that it was built to be a school, and I would like to see it remain a school. Having an apartment building will bring much more traffic as you add probably around 60 cars, additionally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, versus a school which would only have the increased traffic 5 days a week typically. And then that also would not affect the church parking on the weekends or the building of 4 parking garages, I think I heard. I would like to, I wonder why condominiums, I haven't heard anything about condominiums. I'm not sure what zoning that would be or why that's just never been suggested. I find that in apartments, as I once lived in an apartment for many years, that I was better served in a commercial corridor, and many people don't have cars and rely on bus service, which we do have. I would like to wonder also, have you considered the petition that we submitted, the online petition, which had approximately 200 to 250 signatures opposing this variance? 305, thank you. Maywood neighborhood has been one of amazing character and charm with a very, very close family-oriented community. And I would really ask the board to please consider the addition of having another school move into that. Thank you.
James Clark, 742 Eaton Road. I spoke here before. I think the idea of kids being noisy is bizarre. I live at Eaton Road, and I can hear the kids playing lacrosse over at Iroquois. The traffic's been there forever. We got Iroquois and Colebrook going down there ever since I was a kid, and St. Thomas was there. So I don't see where there's a problem with the traffic. I think what we do have in this area, and I live in that area, and I know a lot of young people who are Christians and want to send their kid to a Christian school, but they got to drive their kids to other places. They have to get up early, take their kids to school. They would like to have something local. They can walk the kids there, or maybe a short drive to the school and picking them up at night after work. St. Bosco, if they can prove that they can get the finance to put that in there, I think that would be a heck of a benefit to our neighborhood. Christ the King's too far away for some people to drive their kids every morning. If there was a school up the road, I think that school would be very viable and have a number of people going there, sending their kids there. The other thing I have to say is the camel's nose under the tent of having this project in there is not a good thing, because if the Latin Mass people are having trouble with the Pope being opposed to them, the bishops in this country being opposed to their Mass, we got a guy named Carville saying on TV that they're the next best thing since Hamas. I think we have to change the school name to the Alamo, because these people are out to get these Latin Mass people out of here. I mean, that's a viable thing. And the rest of this, what are we going to do with this church then? We're going to have to sell the rest of it. It's just, I just feel that that's a school. That should stay a school. I don't see any problem with the traffic or the noise. That's right there. But I think you got a huge demand of people that really would benefit from that being a school, and keeping that Latin Mass there, it'd be excellent. I mean, it's thriving, and if it goes away, I think you see a lot of that area going down the tubes. It's going to turn into rental, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. You know, R5 isn't going to mean anything. It's just going to deteriorate, because the people are going to move out and say, well, why don't I want to be here anymore? You know, my church is gone, and I don't have any place to send my kids. So that's my point. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Step right up, sir. Did you already speak, sir?
I just have one question.
No. Did you already speak?
Yes, I did.
Okay, then
Okay.
one opportunity. Otherwise, we'll be here into the morning. As unlikely as it seems, is there anyone here who would like to speak to us about this application that is neither for it nor against it? There is one. Okay. Step right up, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Board. My name is Rich Mall, 292 Coolidge Road. And as you remember, I was here probably a year or two ago before the board, and I made a complaint about a fence, and it was adjudicated to my uncle's satisfaction. I just want to make one not correction here, but observation on, let me get my notes here. Pardon my shuffling papers here. But if I don't have the exact date, but based on what Denise Flanagan said, Stepping Stones left St. Thomas in 2013. Kimmy Romeo, who is a town board member here, a town council person, she engineered a tour of the new Stepping Stones site, which was next to the Wegmans, and it was in the Chase Pitkin. And my wife actually went to school with the woman who ran that place, and we got a lot of information from her as to why she left St. Thomas. And she left St. Thomas because she couldn't keep up with the code requirements. So that's 10 years ago, and again, to be correct, she didn't leave because the Stepping Stones went bankrupt. She left because they couldn't keep up with the code. The other two things I'd like to mention, I was a parishioner at St. Salome, and when the school closed, I was the chairperson of the school committee. Later on, I became the chairperson of the parish council, and we actually sought Providence Housing to buy the school, because even though we were using it, it wasn't up to code. We were a small parish. we were the first parish in Arundequoit, but our territory kept being taken by the newer parishes. Saint Cecilia wasn't a parish in 1908. Neither was Christ the King. The only other later on close by was St. Thomas. So some of the, to compare what, all I want to say is we'll compare the St. Salome's model with the St. Thomas model is apples and oranges, and I would prefer that if there is some pros and cons to the issue, that they leave out continuing to mention St. Salome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who's neither for nor opposed to this application? Seeing none. Does the applicant wish to respond to the matters that were raised during public input portion?
Yes, thank you. So regarding Zoglin's presentation, the board is allowed to use reasonable judgment. I'm not an attorney. Fortunately, my attorney couldn't make it tonight, but I am aware of that provision of the law. In reviewing financial data and financial analyses of all uses permitted within R1 are not required. If those uses seem unreasonable to the board, which all other uses are. Regarding the broker report, it was woefully underestimated the amount of work needed to convert that building to an existing structure, to take into account demolition, to take into account construction when computing a reasonable return. The reference properties, which I did provide a deep analysis of, only refer to the sale of 2 churches and not about computing a reasonable rate of return. As an accountant that spent 15 years in public accounting, a reasonable rate of return involves discounted cash flow models, pro formas of operating rents and operating expenses in order to determine cash flow and develop an internal rate of return. None of that information was included in the broker's report, so it was significantly underestimates what takes into account and what encompasses real estate development. It's a combination of construction, accounting, finance, engineering, architecture. It's an extremely difficult discipline that I rely on many specialists to help me execute. And the broker report did not take that into account. Additionally, there has been no counter of the financial analysis prepared by 43 North Real Estate. We simply utilized the school as showing it would be the least expensive method to compute a reasonable net rate of return on because it already is a school. And if that methodology didn't work to compute a reasonable rate of return, none of the other permissible uses within R1 would work either. Although we did go another step down and analyze the costs, and I went out and got third-party estimates for demolishing the building, third-party estimates for doing the appropriate law-required environmental abatement of the building prior to demolition, and the cost exceeded $1 million to gain 2 feasible lots. So again, a reasonable rate of return when they're referencing $3,900 of rent or $1,500 of expenses, there is no direct correlation with the building as it stands now or reference to the demolition of the building or adding of utilities to the space. Regarding garages, the concept that was presented is not a site plan. We are not presenting a site plan here. It was utilized as a concept for the site, and we will address the garage issue. It wasn't anything that was or wasn't displayed at a public hearing. The public hearings that were held by 43 North were information only. The neighborhood was vehemently opposed to R5 zoning or a zoning change from the past developer. So when I went out to speak with the neighbor, I said, what do you prefer? Would you prefer commercial? Would you prefer residential? I went to the neighborhood and was willing to modify my plan to something that would work for the neighborhood and people. So that's where, if they think I've changed my opinion or changed my step, I took surveys, we took polls. I asked as many people as I knew in this town, the town that I grew up in, what they would prefer, and they did land on multifamily apartments because so many people are getting to an age where they can no longer maintain their home, but they want to stay close to their families and the community. So that's what this project's about. Regarding the price per square foot offered to St. John Bosco, again, even renting real estate is a complicated endeavor. I provided a $10 per square foot base rent, but there's also something called triple net, where you pass on the operating costs of the building, which is where Mr. Flacco got his aggregate rent number from. Additionally, that involved the landlord performing some construction on their behalf. So to get the property to what's called a vanilla box, where that is drywall is done, the roof is done, the utilities work, the heating system works, the windows are functioning, and then any other user specifics, floors, lighting, finishes, things like that, extra bathrooms, code requirements, compliance would be on the tenant. And even when I expressed investing $1 to $2 million in the general restoration of the property to become back to a vanilla box, that still was not of interest to St. John Bosco because of the other $2 million to $3 million of capital investment required to return it to a school or capital investment they have to make. 20 years ago, if they had the school in, and it was Stepping Stones had just stepped out of it, potentially there was an opportunity to put paint on it and be able to rent at a price that they're used to in East Rochester. Also, I know the composition of their students is from the east side. Their board member expressed this greatly to me. So even if they have a competing letter at this time, I still do not believe it's sincere or relevant because I don't think that they have the financial capability to be able to execute the construction project. So just because there's an expression of interest, they've communicated that and signed a letter, they have not incurred the $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 of expenses I've incurred, as well as 6, 8, 12 months, a year's time to put in the energy and go out and get third-party construction estimates, go out and do financial analyses, go out and get brokers' reports, spend the time in the community to know what it takes to redevelop this property. So, in conclusion, we provided significant third-party expert testimony to create reasonable rate of return for this property. I didn't do it by me coming up with numbers out of thin air. Each one of the numbers in my financial analyses is supported by an expert third party. We've evidenced that the parish has attempted to sell this property for a number of years or rent the property without the ability. I believe that I've evidenced that vacancy and economic conditions or what is going on with churches nationally is what's happened and what has created the state of disrepair, not neglect. I believe that the parishes did their best efforts with the funds that they had available to reasonably maintain this property. There have been several roofing repairs. There have been several board ups of windows. There have been several, maintenance items. I have talked to the father specifically about, do you need new locks on the doors? What can we do to help you? Because every time that property gets broken into, that's $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 more that we have to spend in restoring it. So, also, the board has yet to receive a single financial analysis in any of the existing uses or permitted uses within R1 that shows a reasonable rate of return that includes all the necessary costs, the cost of construction, the cost of converting the property to another use, the cost of debt, and the operating costs. None of those analyses have been provided, and we've had 6 or 7 months to be able to perform that information. And I'll tell you why they haven't been provided, because that is very difficult to do. You have to talk to a number of specialists. We have to talk to legal, architectural, engineering, mechanical engineering, structural engineering, construction, and it takes a lot of work to pull together a meaningful financial analysis, which 43 North has prepared. So, that being said, we believe that we provided the board sufficient evidence and thorough evidence that a reasonable rate of return cannot be achieved with any of the permitted uses in R1. And without immediate action, the building will continue to deteriorate. Additionally, any expression of interest is not an expression of action. 43 North has evidenced their ability, their financial viability, and has already made an investment into redevelopment of this property and saving the school. So with that, I would like to ask the board, is there any financial information or information that has been provided that you need to make your decision, or any additional information? Because if it is yet to be provided, I would like to be informed of what that information is, and then I would like the opportunity to be able to prepare that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
With respect to that, all I will tell you is that we don't provide advice to applicants.
Okay. All right, but if there is anything,
I believe that we have in the past expressed things that we were interested in. We have received hundreds of pages of material, both in support and in opposition, and that's where we're at.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
We will close the hearing with respect to this matter, and we will be in recess until 9:30. Stay. Those who do not wish to stay, I have no idea how long this will be, are welcome to leave, but if we could get things back underway. There's a few things that I would like to make clear before we proceed further. Just to clarify some things. First off, this is not about the Latin Mass and whether we're in favor of it or who's opposed to it or what people think about it. That is relevant only to the extent that it relates to the uses of the property and the questions that are before us. The questions that are before us are four. Is there a reasonable return on the investment? Does the property pose unique circumstances? Will granting the variance change the character of the neighborhood? And is the need for the variance a result of, is it self-created? Those are the four standards that apply to determining a use variance. I also want to address a letter that was sent that's a part of the record that was sent after our October meeting, implying that somehow the fact that we adjourned and tabled the October meeting to November was somehow politically motivated or connected. This is a board of volunteers. Every member of this board lives in Irondequoit. We volunteer to serve on this board because we have an interest in this town. We are charged by law with applying the standards that the courts have established in considering applications. Whether personally as a matter of opinion or emotion, we favor or oppose a particular application is irrelevant to the determination. We have to put our personal feelings aside and vote based on our assessment individually of what is presented and what's before us in light of the principles that have been established for these applications. There's different standards for an area variance, like a fence that we had first, than a use variance, which this is. The writer of the letter that I'm referencing implied that, well, stated directly that the zoning board is in someone's back pocket. All right? I will tell you that every member of this board finds that statement to be absolutely reprehensible. We're not in anyone's back pocket, and no single member of this board has any control over the board. We have 6 members right now. Each of us vote the way we feel. We don't always agree, but we agree to disagree, and we get along as a board because we respect each other's opinion and we carry out our duties the way we individually see it. The letter also states that the naysayers are in control, and that the fact that it was adjourned in October was tied to the fact that the election. Well, let me point out that the election was on the first Tuesday of November. We meet on the first Monday of November. We adjourned it 1 month in October. We adjourned it because we received over 100 pages of material related to the application the morning of the day that we had our meeting in October. And that's why when we adjourned it in October, we set up a cutoff date, which was more than a week before the November meeting, to ensure that if that happened again, we'd have time to review everything. Because believe it or not, we like to review everything that we receive because we want to take everything into account that is available to us to make the best decision that we, as 6 individual members of the community, feel is appropriate under those circumstances. So I just wanted to make that clear. And the fact that it was adjourned from November was not anything that any of us had anything to do with. So that's why we're here tonight on that. So, the other thing I want to emphasize at this point, this is the deliberative portion of the meeting. The public input portion of the meeting has been closed, and there is no, unless it is specifically asked for by a member of the board, there is no interaction other than between board members at this point. So, does someone on the board, one of the board members, wish to make a motion with respect to this application?
I'll make a motion that we approve the request by the applicant as presented under the following findings of fact. As far as the reasonable return on investment, Mr. Barrett indicated thorough financial analysis of the property, in which case he did utilize a school as an example, which showed that there would be a lack of reasonable return on the school's investment. He also did extend an opportunity to lease back to the school who is currently interested in the property. It is a unique circumstance in the sense that it would need to be, a variance would need to be granted, but the applicant demonstrated by a thorough review and analysis that no other use would pose a financial benefit. Self-created, I wouldn't necessarily say it's self-created. The property has deteriorated over the years, and it has also been solicited to other buyers during that time, in which case it hasn't necessarily come to an agreement. And as far as change to the character of the neighborhood, I think it would be an added benefit to the character of their neighborhood. Yes, it would change it from a school to high-level apartments, but I think that over the past several years, this property has fallen vacant. It has fallen in disrepair, and I think that this, as a resident within the community where this property is, I think it would be an added benefit visually, aesthetically, and I think it would be a wise financial decision by the applicant to purchase this property, update it for the other members in our community.
Is there a second? Second. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, we need to do seeker before we vote on this?
You know, I have that right in front of me. You are absolutely correct. Before we get to discussion on the motion, we have to do the seeker, which is State Environmental Quality Review Act determination. I believe that this qualifies as an unlisted action, which means that we have to do an assessment form, a short form, and we have a form that's been submitted that it will have no or small impact may occur with respect to a proposed creating a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of the land? And again, it indicates no or small impact may occur. Will the proposed action impair the character of quality of the existing community? Again, it's checked no or small impact may occur. Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that caused the establishment of a critical environmental area? Again, it says no or small impact may occur. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? Again, it's checked no or small impact may occur. The other choice, by the way, is moderate to large impact may occur. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? And again, it's checked no or small impact may occur. Will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies? Again, no. Public-private wastewater treatment utilities? Again, no. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? Again, it's checked no. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources such as wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? Again, it's checked no. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? Again, it's checked no. Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? And again, it is checked no. So does someone wish to make a motion to, the motion would be to determine that the proposed action will not result in any significant adverse environmental impact.
So moved.
I'll second that, Jim.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries 6 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, no members are absent. And the board continues to be constituted 1 member short of our capacity, which is 7. All right, so now we have a motion before us to grant the variance, the use variance as requested. That motion has been seconded. It's now open to discussion among the board.
Jim, I'll just add that I think that the applicant did an exceptional job preparing, doing his homework, reaching out to the public. I think it was a model example of a case. He did his homework, reached out to the public numerous times, took their input, tried to model it, his application to what the public said, and then provided an excellent example financially of the rate of return and how to best utilize the parcel.
All right, I pretty much agree with all of that, but I disagree with you about the ultimate granting or not granting of the variance. With respect to the reasonable return issue, I'm troubled by the fact that the testimony, I believe it was at the would have been at the September meeting. There was testimony that the diocese had not even entertained other applications once it went into discussion with the applicant. That is concerning to me. I'm also very troubled by the fact that, and much of the disagreement with and I don't disagree with the fact that I think the Crane evaluation has some significant gaps in it. When I looked at the comparison of the church properties, both of them were in good repair and ready to be used. This property is not. And I have to go back to the reason why is this property not as saleable and for reuse as a school, which I agree is really the only use under the existing ordinance that would be feasible. For example, a firehouse isn't going to be built there. Using it as a church, there's a church right next door. It would have to be significantly changed in order to be used as anything other than a school, because it was built as a school and has been used as a school. So I think you start with that, but It's a school that's been allowed to go into considerable disrepair. The father, again tonight, testified that vandalism caused the boiler to be damaged. So rather than repair the boiler, they turned it off. And by turning it off, it resulted in significantly increased damage to the building, which was anticipated, according to my understanding of that testimony. And I'm very concerned that if we grant this variance and the large thrust of what we've heard centers around the condition of the building. The applicant addressed that, those in opposition addressed the condition of the building. Everybody's been talking about the condition of the building and the disrepair that it's in. And I believe that that is self-created, not by the applicant. The applicant is a contract purchaser, but it's self-created by the owner. And the owner is the real party in interest behind this variance request. The owner is the diocese. The diocese wants to sell this property to this developer who wants to develop it in the fashion that he's testified to, and I agree that he did everything that an applicant should do. He went out, he talked to the neighbors, he got input from those who were in opposition, he did his homework, he put everything together, but the bottom line for me is the diocese allowed this property to continually deteriorate and failed to take the appropriate measures to ensure the integrity of the building. And now the critical component that's in front of us is we have a building that's in disrepair. We have a building that's falling apart. This is, I think somebody said, the last chance that we may have to save this building. Well, it's because the diocese didn't maintain it. They didn't keep the heat on. They didn't keep the electric on. Yes, there's vandalism. Every property that I know that's subject to vandalism has some kind of insurance. We didn't hear about whether there was any insurance or whether a claim was even made. And I can't get past the fact that the entire variance request, in my view, seems to be the result of a situation that was created by the owner of the property. I agree that there are unique circumstances based on the fact that this is a school building as part of a larger compound in a R1 residential neighborhood. As far as changing the character of the neighborhood is concerned, it's a residential neighborhood. Yes, it's residential for single family, but changing it to residential apartments is not as significant a change as it would be if it was changed to an office building, like other schools that I'm familiar with have been changed to professional offices. And the structure looks the same and it's still sitting in a residential neighborhood, but it's filled on all levels with doctor's offices and other professional offices. That, to me, is more of a change than what's being talked about here in terms of apartments. And whether it's apartments or condominiums, the concept is the same. It's residential property. There's a difference in the fact that the condominium owners own the units, and the applicant would only be the landlord and rent the property out. But I cannot get past the fact that the crux of this application, it rests on the fact that the property was allowed to go to seed for more than a decade. Is there any other discussion?
I'll just add that I think that, he made the, Joel talked about, the finances over the last several years with the Catholic Church and how, it has been challenging for the Catholic Church due to a number of factors, whether it was low enrollment, whether it was, the legal battles that they've had. And I think that when you have a pot of money and you want to invest it, maybe their long-term plan wasn't to keep, or is to sell it off. And so they wanted to put their money where they could, use it in some of the other parishes. And so I thought that, he made that argument for that with regard to, not upkeeping St. Thomas.
Oh, and I think that probably was a large part of it. The problem from my perspective is that that's a decision that was made by the owner of the property. And they made a conscious decision And now they are asking us to say that decision was okay, and we should grant a variance from the requirements of the zoning ordinance. And that's where I run into my problem. I don't know if the rest of you agree with me or not, but that's where I'm at. And again, nothing against the developer. He did a fantastic job, I think. But to me, it comes down to this self-created thing. And also, I'm not convinced that it cannot still be used as a school. What was presented to us was that the Bosco School doesn't want to rent it from the applicant who's going to buy it. But I understood the letter that was read tonight to be an indication to the diocese that they want to buy it from the diocese, and they'll take care of, or some other school may, take care of rectifying the condition of the building and use it as a school. So that's where I'm at. I'd love to hear from everyone else, because I think we owe it to all these people who came out to tell them where we each stand on it. So I'll open the floor to anybody else on the board who'd like to address that.
I worry about just leaving a building vacant for another 5 or 10 years, and then it eventually does collapse. That's my biggest concern here. How long would it take for a school to move in? That could be another 5 to 10 years of planning and gathering funds. I don't want to see that happen. And then the building falls into more disrepair, and then we're right back here.
Or the diocese takes the steps to maintain at least and perhaps rectify some of the neglect that's gone on over the last years. I would hate to see, one gentleman indicated he'd rather look at a pile of rubble. I don't think the rest of the people think that. And one point I will make is that no matter how many signatures are on the petition and how many people are on the waiting list, it's not a numbers game. If it was, all we would do is have an election and say, is this okay or isn't it, and leave it up to everybody to vote on. It's these 4 principles, and I can't get past the self-created hardship aspect of it. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed besides me? Motion carries, 4 votes in favor, 2 opposed, no abstentions, nobody is absent, and the membership of the board is at 6 as opposed to the 7 capacity that is allowed under the statute. Is there any other business to come before the board? Seeing none, I would move to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 6 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. Board continues to be constituted at 6 as opposed to the authorized number of 7. And we are adjourned. I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday, and we'll be back here in a new year.